If you've spent any time on the internet, you've probably come across headlines like, "You can buy a house in Japan for just $10,000." Or even more surprising, some homes in Japan are literally being given away for free. At first, it sounds almost too good to be true. After all, in many parts of the world, especially in countries like the United States and Canada, home prices have climbed so high that owning a house has become a dream for millions of people. So when you hear that you can buy an entire house in Japan for less than the price of a brand new car, your first reaction is probably the same as everyone else's. Why isn't anyone buying them? Well, that's exactly what we're going to find out. Welcome back to J30 World Discovery. Today, we're uncovering the real reason why so many incredibly cheap houses in Japan continue to sit empty year after year. Japan has too many houses, but not enough people. Here's something many people outside Japan don't realize. Japan doesn't have a housing shortage. It actually has the opposite problem. According to the latest government statistics, there are now around 9 million vacant homes across the country. That's nearly 14% of Japan's entire housing supply, meaning roughly 1 out of every 7 houses has no one living in it. It's the highest vacancy rate Japan has ever recorded. The Japanese even have a special word for these empty homes: Akiya, which simply means a vacant or abandoned house. If you browse local government websites, you'll find thousands of Akiya listed for sale at prices that seem almost unbelievable. Some sell for only a few million yen. Some cost less than $10,000. And in certain rural towns, local governments are even willing to give houses away for free, as long as the new owner agrees to move there and actually live in them. At this point, you're probably wondering exactly what I was wondering. If they're this cheap, why aren't Japanese people buying them? That's the question that fascinated me the most. In many countries, especially the United States, housing affordability is one of the biggest challenges people face. A home that drops by just a few $1,000s can suddenly attract a flood of buyers. Yet in Japan, even after prices fall to unbelievably low levels, many of these houses remain unsold for years. And surprisingly, the first reason has very little to do with the houses themselves. It has everything to do with the people. Japan's population is shrinking faster than ever. For decades, Japan has been known as one of the countries with the highest life expectancy in the world. That's certainly something worth celebrating, but it has also created one of the biggest demographic challenges the country has ever faced. Japan's population is getting older, while fewer and fewer babies are being born every year. In fact, Japan's population has been declining for years now. Every year, more people pass away than are born, leaving many small towns and rural communities quieter than ever before. When elderly homeowners die, their children often don't return to inherit the family home. Instead, they move to major cities like Tokyo, Osaka, or Nagoya, where universities, jobs, and career opportunities are far easier to find. As a result, countless homes in the countryside are simply left behind. At first, they're empty for a few months, then a few years. Eventually, weeds take over the yard, the roof begins to deteriorate, and before long, the house becomes one of the millions of Akiya scattered across Japan. To me, this is probably the most surprising part of the story. Many of these homes are still in decent condition. If they were located in the suburbs of the United States or Europe, they'd probably sell for a respectable price. But because they're located in areas where the population keeps shrinking and demand has nearly disappeared, their value has fallen along with the number of people living there. Still, population decline only explains why so many houses have been abandoned. It doesn't answer the bigger question: why don't Japanese people buy these homes to live in, or at least as an investment? Well, the next reason comes down to one of the oldest rules in real estate: location. Location is what really makes these houses so cheap. There's an old saying in real estate: the 3 most important factors are location, location, and location. Japan's bargain-priced homes are no exception. The vast majority of them are located in rural villages, small towns, or communities where young people moved away long ago. In some places, the population has been cut in half over the past few decades. Schools have shut down because there simply aren't enough students. Local businesses have disappeared because there aren't enough customers. In some cases, the nearest hospital or supermarket is miles away. Now, if you're retired and dreaming of a quiet life in the countryside, that might not sound too bad. But for most young people, it's a completely different story. They need jobs, They need good schools for their children. They need hospitals, train stations, shopping centers, and all the conveniences of everyday life. And almost all of those opportunities are concentrated in major cities like Tokyo, Osaka, and Yokohama. To me, this is probably the biggest difference between how foreigners see these cheap homes and how Japanese people see them. Most of us see the price tag and immediately think we've found an incredible bargain. But Japanese buyers aren't just looking at the price. They're thinking about what everyday life would actually be like. Because no matter how cheap a house is, it isn't much of a bargain if you have to drive an hour to work every day, or travel miles just to buy groceries. That's why so many young Japanese people would rather rent a tiny apartment in Tokyo, despite the high cost of living, than own a spacious house in a town where there are very few opportunities left. But surprisingly, location still isn't the biggest obstacle, because even if you're willing to move to the countryside, and even if you manage to buy one of these houses for an unbelievably low price, you may still end up spending far more money than you expected, and that's where many buyers decide to walk away. The purchase price is only a small part of the story. This is probably the biggest surprise for people discovering Japan's cheap homes for the first time. Yes, you might be able to buy a house for around $10,000, but that doesn't mean your total cost will only be $10,000. The reality is that many of these akiya have been sitting empty for decades, and when nobody lives in a house, nobody maintains it. The roof may be leaking. The plumbing and electrical systems may be decades old. Wooden beams may have been damaged by termites, and the yard may have grown into what looks more like a small forest than a garden. Some of these houses even look perfectly fine in online photos. But once buyers step inside, they quickly discover that almost everything needs to be replaced, from the flooring and wiring to the plumbing, and in some cases, even parts of the home structure. According to Japan's housing industry, renovating an older home can easily cost tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars depending on its condition. In other words, you might buy the house for $10,000 only to spend 3, 5, or even 10 times that amount making it livable. That's exactly where many people decide the numbers just don't make sense anymore. Once they add up all the renovation costs, they realize that buying a newer home or even a small apartment in a more convenient location might actually be the smarter financial decision. But surprisingly, renovation costs still aren't what worries many Japanese buyers the most, because there's another factor that's deeply rooted in Japanese culture, one that can cause a home's value to drop almost overnight. That's when a property becomes what's known as a jikobuken. But the biggest concern isn't the repair cost. If you've ever looked into Japanese real estate, you've probably come across a unique term called jikobuken. In Japan, this refers to a property where something tragic happened in the past, such as a suicide, a murder, an unattended death, or another incident that attracted significant public attention. Under Japanese real estate regulations, sellers and real estate agents are often required to disclose this history to potential buyers. The idea is simple. Buyers deserve to know the property's past before making such a major decision. For many foreigners, that might not seem like a big deal. They'll often say, "What's in the past is in the past." But for many Japanese people, it's a very different story. In Japanese culture, a lot of people simply don't feel comfortable living in a home that's associated with a tragic event. It's not necessarily because they believe in ghosts or the supernatural. More often, it's about psychology, cultural traditions, and the emotional weight that comes with the property's history. As a result, jikobuken properties often sell for significantly less than similar homes in the same neighborhood. That's also why you've probably seen viral videos with titles like, "I bought a haunted house in Japan for just a few $1,000s." But in my opinion, this is where one of the biggest misconceptions begins. Not every cheap house in Japan is a haunted house. In fact, most akiya have nothing to do with ghosts or tragic stories. They're inexpensive because they're located in shrinking towns, need expensive renovations, or simply have very little demand. Homes with a tragic history make up only a small percentage of Japan's vacant houses. So while cultural beliefs may make certain properties even harder to sell, they're not the reason Japan has millions of empty homes. Which brings us to another interesting question. If these houses are old, unwanted, and often falling apart, why doesn't Japan simply tear them down and build something new? As strange as it sounds, sometimes it's actually cheaper to leave an abandoned house standing than to demolish it. Sometimes leaving an abandoned house standing is actually cheaper than tearing it down. It sounds completely backwards. If a house has been abandoned for years, is falling apart, and nobody wants to buy it, wouldn't the obvious solution be to tear it down and start over? Surprisingly, in Japan, it's not that simple. The first reason is the cost. Demolishing a house, especially an older wooden one, is far from cheap. Owners have to hire licensed demolition contractors, dispose of construction materials according to strict environmental regulations, and clear the entire property afterward. Depending on the size and condition of the home, demolition alone can cost millions of yen. But that's still not the biggest reason many homeowners hesitate. The bigger issue is property taxes. In many parts of Japan, residential land with a house on it qualifies for significant property tax reductions compared to vacant land. That means if you tear down the old house, the land may lose those tax benefits, and your annual property taxes could increase substantially. Sounds a little backwards, doesn't it? A house that's been abandoned for decades, with weeds taking over the yard, and a roof that's practically ready to collapse, can actually help its owner pay less in taxes simply because it's still standing. Many people assume homeowners leave these properties to rot because they simply don't care. But in reality, they're facing a difficult financial decision. If they keep the house, they have to watch it deteriorate year after year. If they demolish it, they have to spend a large amount of money up front and potentially pay higher property taxes for many years afterward. So the easiest decision becomes doing nothing at all. And that's why so many IKEA continue to sit abandoned year after year, slowly falling into even worse condition. Of course, the Japanese government knows this problem can't continue forever. As the number of abandoned homes keeps growing, it's no longer just an issue for individual property owners. It has become a challenge for entire communities. That's why, over the past several years, Japan has introduced a variety of programs aimed at bringing new life to these towns that have plenty of houses, but not nearly enough people. Japan is trying to bring these forgotten homes back to life. With millions of homes sitting empty across the country, the Japanese government knows this isn't a problem it can simply ignore. The longer these houses are left abandoned, the worse they become. They fall into disrepair, turn into neighborhood eyesores, create fire and safety hazards, and can even drag down property values in the surrounding area. That's why, over the past several years, many local governments have launched programs designed to attract new residents. One of the best-known initiatives is something called an IKEA Bank. Despite the name, it's not actually a bank. Instead, it's an online listing service where vacant homes are posted, making it much easier for people to search for available properties throughout Japan. Some municipalities even help cover renovation costs. Others offer property tax breaks during the first few years. And in certain towns, local governments will even provide cash incentives to young families willing to relocate and settle there permanently. At first glance, it sounds like an incredible deal, which naturally raises another question. If the government is offering all these incentives, why aren't more Japanese people taking advantage of them? In my opinion, it's because none of these programs solve the biggest problem: jobs. A town can give you a house. It can help pay for renovations. It can offer tax breaks and relocation bonuses. But if there aren't enough good jobs nearby, if there aren't quality schools for your children, or real opportunities to build a long-term career, most young families simply aren't going to move there, no matter how cheap the house is. That's why many of today's IKEA buyers belong to a fairly specific group. They're often retirees, remote workers, or foreigners looking for a quieter lifestyle in rural Japan. But even for foreign buyers, purchasing one of these cheap houses isn't nearly as simple as many people online believe. Because there's one misconception that keeps spreading across social media: the idea that anyone can spend a few $1,000s, buy a house in Japan, and move there immediately. The reality is much more complicated than that. Buying a house doesn't mean you can live in Japan. After watching videos about IKEA, you'll often see comments like this: "If houses are really that cheap, I'd buy one tomorrow and retire in Japan." It's an appealing idea, but the reality comes with several obstacles that short social media videos rarely mention. The first, and biggest, is this: buying a house does not automatically give you the right to live in Japan. Unlike some countries that offer residency through real estate investment, Japan doesn't have a program that works that way. In other words, foreigners are generally allowed to purchase property in Japan as long as they meet the legal requirements. But owning a house does not automatically come with a visa or permanent residency. You still need a valid legal reason to live in Japan, whether that's through employment, studying, marriage, or another approved residency status. To me, this is probably the biggest disappointment for many people. The internet often makes it sound like spending a few $1,000s on a house is all it takes to start a brand new life in Japan. But in reality, the house only solves one problem: where you'll live. Building an actual life, there is a completely different challenge. On top of that, many IKEA programs come with their own conditions. Some towns require buyers to move into the property within a certain period of time. Others prioritize young families or people who genuinely plan to settle there instead of investors looking for a bargain. Some renovation grants even require buyers to restore the house within a specific time frame or agree not to sell it immediately after purchasing it. So if you only look at the price tag, these homes seem like incredible bargains. But once you understand the full picture, you realize that the purchase price is only a small part of the story. They're not cheap because they're worthless. And to me, that's what makes Japan's cheap houses so fascinating. They're not cheap because they're falling apart. They're cheap because Japan itself is changing. An aging population, a declining birth rate, young people leaving small towns for big cities, and millions of homes in rural communities with no one left to inherit them. That's the real story behind those eye-catching headlines about $5,000 houses in Japan that have fascinated people all over the world. So the next time you come across a video claiming, "Buy a house in Japan for just $5,000, you'll know there's a lot more to the story than an incredible deal. Now, I'd love to hear what you think. If you had the chance, would you buy an IKEA in Japan for just a few $1,000s? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to J30 World Discovery